Do your characters need to keep their plants safe at night from frost? How can your character deal with water retention issues in their garden? Do you need a weed-free walkway in your story? Does your story have raised bed gardens? Find out about all of these things and more on today's episode. Welcome to Writing Rule with Allie, the Fiction Writer's weekly inspiration station for rural life and lifestyles, from historical to post-apocalyptic, helping you bring your rural stories to life. I'm Allie, and this is episode number 86, Top 5 Gardening Uses for Wool. Stick around to the end to find out all the ways things could possibly go wrong. Now, let's get into this. Number 1. Frost protection. In spring and autumn, one of the greatest dangers to the garden is frost. Frost can damage or even kill mature plants and will kill seedlings, aka the baby plants. This is something that in modern times weathermen warn viewers about, at least here in my area of Tornado Alley. Over the centuries, gardeners have worked hard to protect their plants in the night from frost. One of the ways that this is done is with wool. I have to admit that this is one that I have heard of but have never personally done. It works by placing layers of wool over the plant or around the stem of the plant. Normally, these are 2 to 3 inch layers of wool. The wool will need secured with wire, twine, sticks, or something similar. I have been known to place chicken wire over the straw covering the strawberries, and this would be an option also for wool. This is important especially for high winds and heavy rain. This wool can also be used over perennials in the winter to keep them from freezing. Strawberries get their name from the straw used on them, and wool is the same concept. Other examples are blackberries, raspberries, chives, sorrel, asparagus, watercress, and more. If your character loves flowers, there are many of them too. Roses, daylilies, yarrow, bee balm, and more. Number 2. Mulching. Mulching is used as a way to keep water from evaporating from the soil too quickly and as a way to keep the growth of the weeds down, ensuring that your character's plants get the most nutrition possible. Wool is a great way to mulch. Wool is placed down in a 1 or 2 inch layer. It is hard for the weeds to grow through, plus it lets water go down through it, but not the UV lights, meaning that the water will not be evaporated quickly, giving the plant's roots longer to absorb the water. This is especially important in environments that don't have a lot of extra water to spare. Number 3. Fertilizing or composting. Okay, I know, this one sounds weird, but let me explain. Wool can be added to compost or fertilizer and then mixed thoroughly. You see, wool can absorb up to 30% of its weight in water. This makes it a great way to retain water. This could be extra helpful to the plants that like a lot of water, such as watermelons, tomatoes, lettuce, peppers, cranberries, and a whole lot more. This also helps with the vitality of the soil and overall improves the structure of the soil. That means it isn't loose and crumbly. Crumbly soil tends to blow away with strong winds, but also allows the water to pass to deeper layers of the soil before the younger plants can absorb the water that they need. On top of that, the wool is slow to break down, meaning that it puts nutrients into the soil over longer periods of time: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. All things that plants need to survive. One last thing. If your character is a shepherd, they could take the matted, dirty wool that is removed before the wool is washed and processed and add it to the garden. This will give the garden extra nutrients from the sheep poop. Number 4. Retaining water in raised beds. A raised bed garden means that the structure holds dirt within it at a higher level than the ground level. This is most often done to raise the height of the garden so that your character is not bending over as much. It is also done to contain plants such as mint that like to grow and spread rapidly and often overtake entire areas. With raised beds being higher and having extra heat from the sides and not just the top, they are prone to drying out if they are not watered more frequently. From my experience, I find they need watered double or even triple what the ground level garden is. More so if the bed is a darker color. The reason dark color is good for some plants such as tomatoes is because it makes the soil temperature warmer, helping this type of plant to grow better. One downside is that it is the perfect environment for roly-polies, also called pill bugs. They will devour seedlings and they love young peppers. Your character will need to find a way to combat this type of bug if they use wool as mulch. Number 5. Making pathways with no weeds. You know how weeds can be found in cracks of sidewalks and driveways all over? That is something your character can help to prevent in the garden. Many people, myself included, get really tired of dealing with weeds. In gardens, there are walkways between every other row. That means 2 rows of plants so that when they are ripe, they can walk through and pick them. Now, this is in reference to slightly larger gardens that are several feet or yard at the minimum, but this can be true all the way up to giant cornfields. Wool could be used to place loosely between these, but that would leave them prone to blowing away in the wind. In this case, I'm talking about gardens that have dedicated walkways that they decided to place rocks on, or bricks, or even concrete blocks. Several inches of wool under these will stop weeds from growing up in the cracks. On top of that, it will help to keep the paths from becoming puddles when it rains because the wool will absorb the water. One extra bonus on this is that if the walkway is used in winter, because perhaps it's on the way to the barn, it will help to cut down on the ice melted from the snow. You see, as the snow melts, the wool will soak in the water and not leave it on the pathway to be refrozen in the night, creating an icy walkway. Bonus! Weed barrier in a raised bed. When your character first sets up a raised bed, it's likely to be placed over some grass. Your character could dig out all of the grass and then fill the dugout area, before placing the bed there and then filling the whole thing with soil. But let's be real, no one wants to do that. Instead, we find a way to stop the weeds from growing, and the most common way today is to place cardboard down with a few logs on top of that, and then add the soil. However, cardboard was only first commercialized in 1856. Before then, or perhaps after the apocalypse, your characters can use wool. To top off the fact that it helps to stop weeds, it's also great at retaining water. Since this level is deeper than most of the soil, this means the plant's roots will grow down to reach them, making the plants stronger and healthier. Fun fact! As of 2024, wool pellets are sold at most stores with gardening sections. These are made of fertilizer and wool. And quick reminder before we get to the best part. If you're enjoying this content, I hope you will check out my Buy Me a Coffee page. I have lots of rural gems and stories that you will not find anywhere else. The links can be found in the descriptions. Now, for everyone's favorite part. Likely to go wrong. Your character places wool on their garden to act as a frost protection overnight, but they did not secure it. In the night, the wind picks up and blows the wool away. Also likely to go wrong. Your character uses wool as mulch in the garden. This seems an inviting place for many pill bugs. They soon start eating all the pepper plants. Also likely to go wrong. Your character used wool in the garden as a frost protection on a cold night. However, they did not put enough wool on, and the plant has frost damage and dies. Possible to go wrong. Your character uses wool in their fertilizer to help with water retention in their garden. However, it is not mixed good enough and leaves large chunks of wool in the garden, hampering the plant's growth. Also possible to go wrong. Your character uses wool as a frost protection on a cold night. They forget to take the wool off when the sun comes out in the morning and the plants become too hot in the day and die. I've actually done this one, but with both straw and leaves. Unlikely to go wrong. Your character uses wool as water retention in the raised bed gardens. However, they plant a plant that likes to be in well-drained or sandy soil. This causes the roots to be waterlogged and the plant soon wilts and dies. Also unlikely to go wrong. Your character cuts down a small tree and places a raised bed garden over the fresh stump. The tree is resilient, and by the next year, the tree is growing out of the raised bed. Improbable, but still technically in the realm of possibilities. Your character uses wool as a weed protection under a brick pathway through the garden. Some garden mice find this and make a nest in the wool. Soon, the garden is being eaten by a family of mice. Also improbable, but still technically in the realm of possibilities. Your character places a wool that was poop covered in the compost to be used as fertilizer. Little did they know that the sheep had worm parasites. When they transfer it to the garden as compost and start to plant in the soil, the parasites transfer to your character. The most common ones found in soil are roundworms, whipworms, hookworms, and threadworms. But There are a few more that are regional. Thanks for listening. Until next time, happy wordsmithing!